All right, we will get started. Still a couple people missing, hoping they're able to jump on in the next little while. And if not, then there will be one more session next week sometime. Okay, welcome to SCM Training 2022. My name is Brenda, and my current role is what they call a digital analyst. So I'm that bridge between the technical IT side and the clinical side. And it is an interesting role to be sure. I refer to myself as the nerdy nurse most of the time because I have to be able to talk both those odd languages. And believe me, they have quite a gap between them some days. So today, basically, I'm going to go over what SCM is, kind of what our technology that's used in the hospital is, how you use the computers there, how you log on, lock your workstations, the basics of the type of computers that are there, and then what SCM looks like and how it functions, and then walk you through how to chart, how to look up patient information, and all those things. So the session all this week has been going very well, and we should be done right around 12, usually a few minutes before, give or take. I talk a lot, and you might be tempted to fall asleep sometimes if I have this very lulling voice. Unfortunately, I used to have a computer training room where you could do some hands-on training, but with COVID, we were working from home, and then they literally dismantled the computer room and turned it into a storage room, and they haven't created a new space for me yet. So I'm kind of strapped to doing as a WebEx demonstration for the training. Not the ideal way to learn how to use a computer system, but it's what we've got to work with right now. Once you're on the units, though, the staff, I mean, they use us every day, day in and day out, and so they should be able to pretty quickly answer any questions that you do have. I will also be sending out an email prior to your start date, and that will include your username, your password, and I'll have some additional attachments on there that sort of goes over or is a how-to on some of the key points that I'll cover today just to get you through your initial functions or using of the system on that day. So SCM stands for Sunrise Clinical Manager, and it is the electronic health record for acute care that has been selected to be used in Saskatchewan. We've actually been using it in Saskatchewan since about 2009, but it was rolled out very helter-skelter with no standardization. Everybody developed their own documents or their own processes or implemented in their selected locations. So now that we've become a single health authority, our goal is to standardize and spread and enhance the functionality in the application. So for right now, it's used in Saskatoon and Regina, Swift Current, Moose Jaw, Yorkton, Lloydminster, North Battleford, and Prince Albert. We all use it a little bit differently. Some people only have it in the emergency department. Some people have it in more departments. Some people or some areas have enhanced the functionality, and others are still at the very, very basic stages of the system. So for Prince Albert, we currently use it in the emergency department, in our ICU, our med surge level on level 4 and 5 and 6. We will be expanding functionality, at least for access over the next few months. With the new NICU, they will now have access to SCM, maybe not right on opening, but fairly close to it. No charting at that point, but they'll be using a status board. So you'll begin to see the system in all departments over the next while. In emergency, we basically have what we call a status board, which is a communication tool and a view that shows patient information and provides alerts to the people that are working, the clinical people who are working with the patient. And will be showing you sort of how that looks throughout the training session today. Documents that are done in the electronic health record in the emergency department are the triage notes, as well as the physician assessment notes. In ICU and level 4, 5, and 6, the nursing admission history is done electronically, the system assessments are done electronically, and a note called nursing daily care. On level 4, 5, and 6, in addition to those notes, we also have all the nursing progress notes, the vital signs, and the input and output. So primarily the way we use SCM right now is for documentation and for a communication tool on patient information, kind of a status board. It's at a glance where you can look and you see alerts regarding the patient and information. Eventually, this will be a full electronic health record that will include all electronic orders, communication tools, allergy collections, and that's just, it's in the works. Documentation is expanding, and we actually have 3 provincial projects underway right now to expand documentation to pharmacy, therapies, and dietary. I think for Prince Albert, pharmacy is set to implement in the early fall. So lots of work going on behind the scenes in the program. The first thing that you guys are going to notice in SCM is that we're actually going to be upgrading our version, and that's going to be happening right at the end of May. Is the targeted date for Prince Albert. Saskatoon upgraded a couple weeks ago, Yorkton last weekend, and we're just kind of rolling it out week by week throughout the province. Not much will change in how you use it or how your documents look with the upgrade. How you log in is going to be a little bit different than how I'm going to show you today, and I actually don't even have all the details on what that login is going to look like yet, but there will be information communicated to the units, and I will send specific information to your instructors as well to share with you. So that's kind of SCM in a nutshell as to where it is today within the province and where it is within Prince Albert. Now I'm going to try and explain how our computers work in the hospital. So when you get up onto the unit of the hospital, you will see that there's sort of computer workstations and a few different versions of them. So at your nursing station, you'll have anywhere between 3 to 5 computers at the desk, primarily just a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. There are little black boxes beside them that are about 8 inches by 6 inches. And then you'll see some computers that are on carts. So we refer to those as workstations on wheels, and they allow you to take the computer to the bedside, and it's very handy for when you're doing admissions. So you don't have to write everything down on paper and then go back to a computer and input it all into the computer. So those ones are called workstations on wheels. And then on all the units, we also have at least 2 wall-mounted workstations. And they're just literally mounted right on the wall in the hallway, usually at the ends of the hallway. So this is so that you have a place, hopefully, to do your documentation or access patient information as close to your patient's location as possible. They tend to get very busy at certain times of the day. There's lots of people charting or looking at patient information. And it's just hopefully there's a workstation available wherever your location is. So we're probably going to have to beef up the numbers of computers as we add functionality and users to SCM. That's kind of where we're at today. The technology that's used is something called VDI, or Virtual Desktop Interface. So when you log into a computer at the hospital, there's no hard drive or brains of the computer sitting right beside it. You're actually logging into a server that's completely off-site in the province. What this allows us to do is to have those workstations, what we call virtual. So when you log into one computer on the unit, you'll type in your username and password. The system will log you onto the computer or onto your session. But when you're done working on that computer, all you're going to do is lock it. And you can go to any other computer in the hospital on your unit and unlock it, and you'll be right back exactly on the same screen where you were on your last computer. So your session is accessible on any computer because of the fact that it's not tied specifically to that workstation. Does that make sense to everybody? It's just, and multiple people will be logging on to the same workstation. Also wanted to mention that as I'm talking today, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I will try and keep my eye on the chat box, but I find once I'm sharing my screen and I'm demonstrating, it's not always easy to catch when somebody writes a question into the chat. So I prefer it if you actually interrupt me with audio, and then we can review basically any questions along the way. So to log into the computers, you'll type in your username, you'll type in your password, it will launch your session. And then when you're done looking at the computer, you want to lock it. And it's really, really, really important to lock computers when you leave them, and for two reasons. The first one is to protect patient information. With our paper charts, we had them tucked away behind the nursing desk on a rack, and we still have them because we still have some of our stuff on paper. But with the computers, we've got them hanging in the hallways. We've got them on mobile carts parked in hallways, in patient rooms. And if you don't lock the computer, you're going to leave patient information accessible and available to anybody who's passing by the workstation, be it maintenance men, housekeepers, visitors, dietary. And it might be information that they don't require access to do their work. And of course, visitors don't need access to the patient chart. So it's very important for that privacy protection to lock the computer. The second important reason is to protect your own privacy. So when you're logged onto the computer, the patient information that you're reviewing and looking at is logged. It can be audited at any time, and any patient in Saskatchewan has the right to request a list of who has access to their electronic health records. So if you're logged into that device, it's tracking any access back to you. If you're working at the nursing station and a call bell goes up and you go to answer it and you don't lock your computer, and Dr. Smith is talking to the nurse there, and he has some questions about one of his patients, and he's like, oh, there's a computer just ready to go. And he sits down and he starts reviewing some of his patient information. If that were to be audited, that access that the physician did would not be traced back to him. It's going to be traced back to the person that was logged onto the computer. So locking is really, really an important habit to get into and practice, and to support each other in. If you happen to walk by a computer that's got the screen on and nobody's sitting in it, go ahead and lock it. That person doesn't lose any information. They don't lose their place of work. It stays exactly there. It's just locked and protected. Now, how do you lock these computers? So there's actually a few different ways. When you're on the unit, you'll see the staff nurses actually using their ID cards to tap a little card reader beside the computer. They'll tap it and they're able to put in a 4-digit number to actually log in or unlock the computer, and they'll tap their card again and it will lock the computer. In Prince Albert, currently we do not give students ID tag cards, and it's the same cards that you use to unlock doors and unlock elevators. But we don't give those cards to students in Prince Albert. So for you guys, your login will always be a manual, type in your username and password. And locking the computer can be done one of three ways. You can do Control Alt Delete on the keyboard, and then you'll have a list will pop up and you can select lock this computer. On the little black boxes that are beside the computers, so those black boxes that are about 8 inches by 6 inches or maybe even a little smaller, they'll have the words WYSE on top of them. We refer to them as WISE terminals. They're basically power hubs. And they're not wise, they're dumb. They have no brains in them whatsoever, but they'll have a little glowing blue power button on them. And if you just push that power button as a short push, don't hold it in for an extended period of time, just push it in and let it go, it will lock the computer. At the computer desk or at the nursing station, those little black boxes will be right close to the monitors. If you're using a workstation on wheels, the little black box is under the tray, and the tray just slides back, and we've got all the wires and stuff that you need to run a computer shoved inside under that tray, but the little black box is there as well. And on the units that are hanging on the walls, those little black boxes are just mounted up behind the monitor. So you have to just tilt your head to the side and you'll see them. So a push to the power button on the WISE terminal will lock the computer. And the third way, which is my personal preferred way, is to hold down the Windows key on your keyboard. So the Windows key is a key that's got four little squares on it. It looks the same as the symbol in the bottom left corner of the screen. And you can hold that down and push the letter L. L equal keyword for lock. So Windows button and the L button, and that will lock your computer. So those three ways to lock the computer. Windows L is the quickest way. Control Alt Delete's pretty quick as well. And if you have access, like the workstation, the power button on the WISE terminals are quite easy. If you have to pull open the tray on the workstations on wheels, it's a little bit more work to do the locking. But three ways to lock a computer, and a really, really important thing that needs to happen. So when I send out your emails, I mentioned I'm going to send your username and your temporary password to log into the computer. Some of you may currently or may have previously worked in a role within the former Prince Albert Parkland Health Region and have already had a computer or a network account set up. When you're working as a student or you're on the unit as a student, you will actually log in with a different account. We have to be able to audit your access on the computer as a student separately from your access as a staff person. So all student accounts will always start, your username will always start with STU, so indicating student, and that will be sort of a reminder that, oh yeah, you won't have the same access to tools as a student as you do as a staff member. So sometimes you need access to different programs depending on your role as staff and then your role as a student as well. So if you will have a network account that you've already logged into, you won't be using that one when you are a student. You'll log in with your student account so that those can be audited or logged separately. Any questions thus far? So I've kind of covered the history of SCM and I've covered the technology aspect, and I cover a lot of information in today's session, and I know it's going to feel a little bit like a bit of a brain warp at the end of it. But once you're on the unit and you start using it, it will all make a little bit more sense, and it won't take long, and it will become second nature. So I'm actually going to share my screen now so that I can walk you through how you're going to log in to SCM. Your desktop, you will see two icons, a Citrix storefront and a Citrix manual storefront. Citrix manual storefront allows you to log in manually in the case that you have to log into a temporary or a different location. 99% of the time, you will use the Citrix storefront to log you in, which should automatically fill in your username and password. Double-click on the Citrix storefront icon. The storefront will open, and on the first time it opens, it's just a basic home page. You will need to go to the Apps tab to select the application that you wish to open. When you click on it, you will be presented with a list of application icons that you currently are approved to have access to. You're going to be looking for SCM Allscripts Gateway. If you click on the star up in the top left-hand corner, going forward when you log into the storefront, the gateway will automatically be on the home page and you won't need to select it from the apps. Single click on the gateway and patiently wait. When the login screen appears, if it doesn't automatically put in your username and password, just use the same username and password that you use to log into the computer. When the screen first opens, you may see a window that looks like this. Has the basic SCM screen but no information. On your very first login, you may be presented with a completely blank screen that looks a little bit more like this, but even this bottom part won't exist. It'll just be blank, and the only thing you'll see on there is up at the top, My Applications. If it does come up blank like that on your initial login, click on the little arrow by My Applications and select Emergency Department, and you will then be presented with a screen like this. Sometimes, if there's a sidebar that is displaying beside it, and that also allows you to select Emergency Department. An emergency department is the part of the application that we're currently using in Prince Albert. It really doesn't have anything to do with acute care or emergency department. If the sidebar is present and you do not wish to have it there, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little tab. You can click the arrow and the sidebar will disappear. When you log onto the computer and you lock the computer, after that first login, you'll see a welcome screen and a circle that spins for probably a minute to a minute and a half before it loads your desktop. After that, just unlocking it will be very quick. The computer's logins are set right now to stay active for up to 18 hours, which means that, if you log in the morning when you get on the unit and you don't get back to a computer to do some charting for 3 or 4 hours, it's still going to be there just to unlock. If you're away for a day and a half, after 18 hours, the system will automatically log you off the system. SCM itself, once you log in, will only stay active for up to 3 hours. If you haven't used it in the 3-hour window, it will log off, and that's just for patient privacy and security. And you'll have to click on the Citrix icon again to log back into it. One of the things you will notice that's a little bit different from your login than this login I just made to production is in these the first file folder tabs at the top here. This file folder tab says status board, and this is a view. The first tab is always your view of SCM, and we have two different views. One is a status board and one is a patient list. Staff will be using primarily the status board view. As students, you will be using the patient list view for the first couple years of rotations. If you come back for your preceptor or once you're a staff, you'll have the status board view and a little bit of additional training. I will be showing you what the status board looks like this morning because some of your charting impacts information on it. But for your primary base of work, you'll be working off patient lists. So your first file folder tab will say patient list, and you won't have the button underneath it to toggle back and forth between the two views. You'll work strictly on the patient list view. So I'm actually going to log into a session now that is exactly how yours is going to look like and work. So this is exactly what you're going to see when you first log into SCM on the unit. Looks like a pretty blank screen and there's no patients available. So I'm going to go through the technical pieces of the screen right now, what you see in front of you and what names we refer to them as. You won't need to remember the names per se of what I'm calling things, but the functionality or what the tools are is what is more important. So at the very top, you see a bar. It says File, Registration, View, Go to Actions, Preferences, and Tool. I refer to that as the File menu. And the key one to remember on that one is Preferences. So Preferences are things where you set the system up, or you can add or change things in the system and the view and the functionality so that it makes your work easier or better. When I create your SCM accounts, I actually apply something called a profile, which has a baseline set of preferences. So I, set up how things look or show up for you so that they are at the best functionality that I can make them when you first start using it. So for instance, in this next bar, which is what we call the main toolbar, you've got a basic set of icons here with the functions that are pertinent to the work you're going to do. Instead of leaving 75 icons up at the top where 70 of them don't have any functions right now, we apply a profile that keeps them a little bit neat and tidier. But there are some things that you may want to change, and I will be showing you some of those preferences as we go through this session today. So preferences in the file menu. Below the file menu is what we call the main toolbar. So this toolbar is primarily, this will always show on your screen no matter where you are within the patient's chart. So whether you're looking at progress notes or flow sheets or lab results, you're always going to see these icons up at the top here. So they are a general functionality or shortcuts anywhere within the patient's chart in SCM. The first ones you see are arrows. They're grayed out right now because we don't have a list of patients, but they will let you scroll back and forth through your patients so that if you're looking at lab results, you don't have to go back to your patient list to pick a different patient and go back to looking at results or documents. You can just scroll to your next patient. The green circle with the spinning arrows is a refresh button. Generally, the system refreshes about every 30 seconds, so not a tool that you will use often. But sometimes when you're like, I think that should look different, maybe the screen didn't refresh, it's just an option that's available. The next one, Find Patient, is a tool that you will use to search for a patient who's not showing up on your list. So perhaps the patient was discharged and you have to find some charting. Maybe there were some glitches in our electronic system and a patient was admitted, but they're not showing up properly in the list and you need to look up information on them. You can use Find Patient to search for any of those patients that just aren't right at your fingertips. Find Visit means that you're going to search for a specific visit the patient had to the hospital. So perhaps you just want information on their emergency room visit. As a student, Find Visit isn't something that you will likely use at all. Find Patient is one you would use more frequently. Enter Document is how you're going to start all your new chart notes. So when a patient comes and you're going to do an admission on them, Enter Document is where you're going to go to start that new document. Print reports. So right now for our clinical staff, we only have one report. Those will be growing in the near future, but the only report that you will print is a vital sign report. And that just lets you print out a set of vital signs if you wanted to send a copy along with a patient who's being transferred to another facility. And we'll go through all these functionalities. You'll see me using these icons as we go through the session today as well. Below the main toolbar is a blue bar that goes all the way across the page, and that is known as the patient header. So once we select a patient, search for a patient, patient information will display in that patient header. So you'll have the patient's name, their age, their room and bed number, their admission date, who their attending physician is, and a couple other numbers up there that are patient and visit identifiers. It's important to double check who's showing in your patient header because that tells you whose chart you're looking at and who you are charting on. Whoever is displayed up in that patient header is the current chart you're working with. Below the patient header is a row of file folder tabs. The first tab, as I mentioned before, is your view. So you have the patient list view and you don't have the button to toggle back and forth between the status board right now. All the other tabs to the right of your view are the patient's chart. So because we don't have a patient selected right now, all those tabs are inactive. And below the tabs is another row of icons, and these ones are called the tab toolbar. So we have a main toolbar and a tab toolbar. And it's called a tab toolbar because any of the icons displayed under the tabs are linked directly to the tab that's highlighted. So right now, the tab that's highlighted is patient list. So all the icons in the tab toolbar are functions related to the patient list. Once we start moving through other tabs, you'll see that those icons change as the functions change specifically related to each tab. Below the tab toolbar is what we refer to as the dashboard. The dashboard looks a little bit different in a status board view or patient list view. But first you have a drop-down window for your current list where you can select the list that you want to look at. And right now we don't have any lists. And then two buttons where you can select all the patients in your list or just save a selected group of patients from your list. So as a quick recap, we've got the File menu, the main toolbar, the patient header, the tabs, the tab toolbar, and the dashboard, and a very, very blank screen. So the very first thing that you're going to do when you log on to SCM the first time on your unit is actually create or build your patient list. When you move to another unit in the fall, you will return to a blank screen like this again. So SCM is configured so that you are given a security access to the location where you are currently assigned. So if you're a staff on level 4, you will have access to the patients on level 4, but you won't have access to the patients on level 5. And if you change position, then your security access will be updated and changed as well. So you're going to build a patient list for this rotation. Just keep somewhere tucked up in the back of your mind that when you move into a different rotation, you will need to build new patient lists. So the only active icon that we have in our tab toolbar right now is New Visit List. It's the first thing we have to do, and we don't have many other choices there. So you'll click the icon for New Visit List, and it pops up with this other window, and there are a number of tabs within this window. So we get to pick our criteria for our patient list. So there can be all kinds of criteria applied to a list. My role, if I'm a physician, I can pick a role I want to list with all the patients that are admitted to that I'm the family physician for, or I'm the attending physician for. The next tab is location. So where do I want my list based on? We can also filter or add things to our list, like I want all the patients where I'm the family physician that were discharged yesterday from the emergency department. So there's all kinds of things that can be applied to lists. For your role, you want a list of all the patients in the location that you are doing your clinical rotation. So you're going to go to the location tab. When we're at the location tab, we've got 3 selections up at the top, and I just refer to them as the circles, and you're going to want to go to the 3rd circle that says include patients at the selected location only. And then we've got locations where patients are registered to within our region. And even though it shows them being that we have registered patients to these areas, Shellbrook and Birchview don't currently use SCM. So we're going to move down to Victoria Hospital. Whenever you see these little plus symbols within SCM, it means that there's more information, that we can expand that selection. So we don't want all the patients in Victoria Hospital. We only want the patients on our unit. So we're going to expand Victoria Hospital. And then you're going to look for Victoria Hospital Inpatient. So VH, Victoria Hospital Inpatient, and you can see that that option can be expanded as well. And then it has a list of our inpatient units. So you're going to select the unit where you're doing your rotation. So if you're on level 4, you will select 4 surge. If you're on level 5, you'll select 5 med, and level 6, 6 med. So my training patients are on level 6 in this system, so I'm going to pick 6 med. I highlight it, and then I want to move it over into the right-hand side. So you're going to see these two columns in quite a few of the preference things within SCM. Left-hand column or box is always all your available options. The right-hand box is always what you've chosen. So highlight 6med, add. And now it's showing over on the right-hand side. So I've got the location that I want to see patients for, and I can just say OK. Now the system wants me to give this list a name so that when I'm sorting through lists, I know which one I'm looking at. So you can call them whatever you want. I usually call my level lists just level 6, level 4, or level 5. So I'm going to call this one level 6. Click OK. Excuse me. And you're going to get a list of all the actively admitted patients on the unit. The lists come with a basic set of columns. The first set already have information in them, and this is information that basically is in our registration system on the patient. So patient's name, their ID number. So there's two numbers here. One is what is referred to as a regional number, and it's an identifier for the patient that's unique to that patient within the Prince Albert Parkland Health Region. And the other one is a visit number. So every time someone comes to the registration desk at the hospital and they're registered into the system, whether they're coming to the emergency department or coming for lab work or being admitted, they are given a visit number unique to that visit. And that's how the systems know to connect all the information that's part of that visit to the hospital. So lab results, documents, orders, they're all linked to that number. Their birth date, their location, their visit status, which they all should say admitted, their admission date and time, and who their attending physician is. So those columns already come pre-populated with information. The other columns after provider are alerts and functions within SCM. And there's a number of these columns that have no purpose right now. And even if you saw flags in them, they would be meaningless to you. So I prefer not to have them display on the screen when it's not information that is pertinent to the work I'm doing right now. So you can modify these columns. And to do that, you're going to go to a tab toolbar icon that says Select Visit List Column. So when I click on that, here's those two screens again. Left-hand box contains all of the columns I could add to my view, and the right-hand side are the ones that are currently being displayed. So patient name to provider are already pre-populated with information. So we're going to leave those alone and just leave them displayed there. However, from provider down, there's only two columns that have purposeful functionality for us at this time, and that is new results and flag new. So outside of new results and flag new, we actually want to remove the other columns. So we'll remove new documents, new community results. I want to keep my new results, remove new orders, remove new alerts, keep flag new, remove unacknowledged alerts, and to sign. And once I've got the columns that I want to keep on my board, I click OK, and then it just is a little bit easier to use, and you're not looking at information that isn't going to provide you any value. So those two columns, flag new and new results. Our lab and diagnostic imaging systems feed their results into SCM as soon as they're completed in their systems. And we get alerts when those lab tests or x-rays are completed. And those alerts show up as a flag. So there's three colors of flag: red flag, green flag, and yellow flag. If the flag is green, it means all test results have returned and everything is within normal values. If there's a red flag, it means something within the result is not within normal values. And if it's a yellow flag, it means that it doesn't have a high or low value to compare to. Those are usually text results, comments, or x-rays. So there's no normals for an x-ray. So those will present as a yellow flag. When you see the flag in your new results column, It's just saying, it's like waving, hi, I've got new lab results available for you. And you can double click on the flag and review those results. The results are also always available under your tab for results here too. So the flag is just an alert, and although you're able to view them from by double clicking on the flag, that's not the only place that you can view them from. After you have reviewed those results with the flag, you'll see a button on that little pop-up screen that says clear the flag. And what that does is it erases the flag from your column so that you have a blank box again, so that it's able to receive new alerts when there's additional results that are completed at lab or x-ray. And I will be showing you all this too as we go through. Before that flag can show up on the screen, though, you actually have to turn the alert on, and that's what the flag new column is. It's basically saying, I would like to receive these alerts when there's new lab results. So to turn the flag on, you select the patient, and they turn a dark blue in highlighted color. And then in your tab toolbar, there is an icon that says flag new on with a green check mark. So if I want to turn the flag or turn the alert on, I click that. It puts an X in the flag new column, and that means I will receive alerts when there are new results available. The other way you can turn the flag on and off is literally by double clicking in the box for the patient, and it will turn that flag alert on and off. So when you build your initial patient list, and we use it building the new visit list, or what we call the criteria, we select our criteria from that window where we had the different tabs. I tend to refer to those lists as live lists, which means that any patient that gets admitted to the unit and is registered at the registration desk automatically appears on the list. And any patient that leaves and is discharged automatically disappears from the list. So it is live in the sense that it should reflect live data as it's happening in real time. When you first start your clinical rotation, you'll probably be assigned one patient, and that'll increase to 2 and 3 patients as you go through the day. And it can be a bit tedious to always have a list of 36 patients to scroll through or pick your patients off of when you only are working with 1 or 2. The other thing that can happen is if your patient is discharged and they disappear from this list, you may still have a little bit of charting to finish up in the progress notes just regarding their discharge. And if they're gone from the list, it just means that you have to take the extra step of searching for them afterwards. And you also kind of lose that reminder that that patient was, you still need to finish charting on that patient because you won't see their name on the screen anymore. So to improve both of those processes, not having 36 patients on the screen, as well as being able to control when that patient is removed from a list, you can also create a personalized list. So we've got our live list, but now it's better to work off a list that just includes our patients. So once you have a patient assignment, you can highlight that patient on the board, and if you have more than one patient, you can select them on the list. So if the patients are all in one room next to the other, you can actually just drag your mouse and highlight them all. But if they're in different rooms or different locations, you can highlight one, use the control key on the keyboard, and then you can select other patients that are part of your assignment. So I've selected 3 patients that are the patients that I'm assigned to work with today, and I want to save them to my own personal list. So with them highlighted, that's where I'm going to go to this button that says Save Selected Patients. So it's like, okay, we'll save those patients to a new list. What do you want to call this list? So you can call it whatever you want. These are my patients, so that's what I'm calling my list. And then I have a much smaller list with only 3 patients. So now if I'm reviewing chart information, you can see these scroll buttons are active now, and I can just scroll through my 3 patients. And when I get to the last one, it says, do you want to go back to the top of your list? So it makes it a little bit more efficient when you're charting. The other thing about this list is it's no longer a live list. So if you look at the list name here where it says My Patients, you'll see that there's a small asterisk or star right in front of the title of the list. And that indicates that it is basically a personalized list or a special list. It's not a criteria list. If I drop this down now, I can see that my level 6 list does not have that little star in front of it. So I know that one is a criteria-based list or a live list. When I'm working with my personalized list, when the patient gets discharged, they're going to disappear off that level 6 list, but they're still going to stay on my list because I didn't say that the patient had to be admitted in order to be on my list. So my list is just going to keep those patients. So now I'm going to have that reminder. I need to finish off the charting. I have the time. I don't have to go searching for the patient with a find patient, and I can just select my patient. Now, when I'm all finished with that patient, or maybe I was gone for a couple days and now I have a different patient assignment and I don't need this patient on my list anymore, I just highlight the patient and then there's a tab toolbar icon that says Remove Selected Visits. So I click that and the patient is now removed from my list. When I have a new patient assigned to me, I go back to my level list and I'm going to select the new patient assigned to me, save that selected patient. I've already got my personal list here, so I just want to add that patient to my list, and the new patient is there. If you need to search for a patient, either because you didn't have them on the personalized list or they're not showing up in the live list for some reason and you need to review some information, that's when you're going to go to the main toolbar icon for Find Patient. So when I click on that, there's a lot of different search criteria that can be used. Usually start with first and last name and then click search. And then I'll get a list of all people who have been registered in our system with that first and last name. So you want to make sure then that you confirm gender and birth date to select the correct patient. Once you've highlighted the right patient, you want to click on Show Visits. You want to see where they've been registered to. And then you'll get a list of all the visits that this patient has had. The newest one and the one you're most likely looking for would be up at the top. So you would highlight the visit that you want to look at information on, the chart you want to access, click OK, and then the system says, okay, so you're trying to access patient information that's not part of your security clearance area. Why is it that you need to access this information? So there's a drop-down list of reasons. We have a few departments that their access to patient information is always done this way. Our finance department, when they have to review a specific chart for billing, they always have to put in their reason for reviewing it. Our quality department, when they're reviewing charts for critical incidents, always need to put in a reason so that they don't just have any access to any specific location, but they're looking specifically at a chart. In your case, it could be because you're doing charting or documentation after discharge. Perhaps if you were a staff nurse and your primary position was on level 5 and today everybody called in sick on level 6, so the nursing supervisor says, can you go up and help out on level 6 today? They're very short-staffed. And when you're on level 6, you don't have access to those patients because it's not your home base. So there's also an option to select working away from your home department. So if you are pulled and you need access to charts, you can always find them. It's just not automatically accessible. So we'll say our reason for needing to access this chart is because we're documenting after they were discharged. If none of the drop-down list is why you're doing it, you can free text in your reason as well. And this is so that if chart access is ever audited and they're trying to connect the dots as to why, usually it's like, okay, yes, they accessed this chart because today was a day that they were working and this is the location they were working in. But when you access charts that aren't part of your regular schedule, then if it's audited and they start asking you, so why did you access this information? And this allows you to leave those reasons and not have to remember them. So once I click OK, my patient that I searched for is now showing up on a list. The list is now called a temporary list, and that patient is also displayed up in my patient header. So this is where I was mentioning we've got their name, their room and bed number. Their height and weight will display up in the header as well if it's been collected and entered into the system within the last 7 days. After 7 days, it'll go blank again. Their admission date, who their attending physician is. Here's those two number identifiers. First one being that regional number that's unique to the patient, and the second one being their visit number. So this registered visit to the hospital. Their birth date, age, and gender. Sometimes if the height and weight's not showing up here and you want a quick reference to it, you can actually right-click in the patient header and have it show more header info. And if they've had height and weight entered during this registration to the hospital, it'll actually still be showing up in these windows here. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we don't do that. We did do that for a while actually with students where I had them going in and searching and reviewing, but it didn't end up being a practical way to do the workflow. So they will have access to their patients and don't need to put in an override reason even when you are going in the day ahead. That would all be validatable just by their schedules. Yeah. So with this patient being on a temporary lists basically are active and accessible for the duration that SCM is logged in. So if you had searched for a patient, if you were say maybe pulled to level 4 or level 5 and you had searched for a patient and they were on your list, if you left the computer for longer than 3 hours and SCM logged itself off, then your temporary list would no longer be available or it wouldn't show anymore and the patient wouldn't be on there. The override reason or the reason you put in for accessing the chart is actually allows you access to the chart for 24 hours. So you wouldn't have to, if you had to search for the patient again, you wouldn't have to put the reason you were accessing the information in again for 24 hours. But if you are going to need to review the information on this patient more than once on a shift and you might be away from the computer for more than 3 hours, I suggest you just also save the patient from the temporary list to your own list so that even if the computer logged, or not the computer, but SCM logged off, the patient would still be on the list. So same process, patients highlighted, save selected patients. I want to add it to the list I already have there. I do have the option to create a new list if that's something I was wanting to do. And now Mickey Mouse is on my personal list and he won't disappear within the 3-hour window of not being on the computer. Again, when I'm done with that patient, highlight that patient and remove selected visits. So now that you have created your patient list and minimized your columns or set up your columns just with the flag new and new results, we're ready to start reviewing patient information within the chart.